Hello and welcome to the lesson video for section 713. This is going to go a little bit more into unit rates as well as talking about head starts and different sort of ways to solve these expressions. So what I want to start off with is introducing you to this, or reintroducing you to this table where you can find things out about the information given. So I want to start with a table that says it provides you with how many miles a vehicle can travel for how many gallons that they put into it. Now I want to emphasize that this is important to note that if you are traveling 0 miles, that you are going to use 0 gallons of gas. And you'll notice that both of those parts of the table have 0 gallons going with 0 miles. This means that we are going to have what is called a proportional relationship. And we could talk more about proportional later, but going through 0, 0 is one of the most important topics or most important pieces of information for something being proportional. So what you're going to be asked to do is to try and figure out a rate that will allow you to fill in this table. So I'm going to start off with this first one. You are provided with some information, such as car A. So we're going to focus only in on car A right now. We're going to look just at that section. And it goes 0 gallons for 0 miles. That's fine. But also, you're going to be looking at the fact that it has a 150 and a 5 that matches together. This is going to allow us to calculate the rate that this car travels on gas miles, or miles per gallon. So you're going to take a 150 miles divided by 5 gallons. And this follows a similar pattern to doing miles per hour. In this case, it is strictly miles per gallon. So keep that in mind. 150 divided by 5 gives me a unit rate of 30 miles per 1 gallon. And you don't have to write the 1, it's just miles per gallon. Now, some of you may have heard this term before where you are talking about a car's MPG. This is that same notation just written out as miles per gallon. A car that gets a better gas mileage or gets better mileage has a higher miles to gallon number that's associated with it. So you can also test this using the 180 and the 6 if you would have liked. But when you check that, you've got 6 and 180. It's going to give you the exact same thing, which is good. You want that same number. You could have done 180 miles divided by 6 gallons, and you also get 30 miles to the gallon. So all that being said, if you use 3 gallons to figure out the distance that your car can go, all you have to do is do 3 times 30, which equals 90 miles. If you wanted to figure it out for 10, you would do 10 for the number of gallons times 30 miles per gallon gives me 300. And I'll leave the last section for you to do. When you are given the value for car B and you're trying to figure out how many miles per gallon car B uses, the 0, 0 doesn't help you as much, but you know 54 and 3 can be used together. So for this car, if you do 54 miles per 3 gallons, you divide that and you get a total of 18 miles per gallon. In other words, you could say the car gets 18 mpg, which is miles per gallon. That's sort of the notation for it. And then if you go and want to figure out 5 gallons times 18 equals 90 miles. 6 gallons times 18 is 108 miles. And again, I'll leave the last section of 12 for you. Now, based off of this information, you can say that which car can travel further on 5 gallons of gas? The answer is clearly car A, because it has much higher miles per gallon. It gets better gas mileage. Okay. Now, I will ask you to try to fill in a table for car C if you know that it uses 6 gallons of gas and travels 120 miles. In other words, you're going to just add another column to this table, but at the spot where it's the 6 gallons, you're going to put 120 miles. And you also know that 0, 0 is part of your table. So I'm going to ask you to do that. And just pause the video, try to fill it in, and then we'll come back and make sure that you have this. Okay. You should have been able to take 120 divided by 6, and you get a total of 20 miles per gallon. And then you follow the same process. 20 times 3, or 3 gallons times 20 miles per gallon, is 60 miles. For 5, it's 100. For 10, it is 200. And then for 12, it is 240. And again, this is car C, and it is a answer in miles. I am going to talk about one other important part to this, where in this problem you could very easily fill in the table by simply, if you wanted to know any distance that the car could travel, all you had to do was take the number of gallons times the miles per gallon of the car. However, you will not always be able to just multiply by a number and have it work out, like this next example that I'm going to show you. So in this problem, you are looking at a situation where two people, it says, Tamika and Lois like to knit. They've decided to knit a scarf using the same pattern. Tamika started knitting the scarf last week. This is a very important detail. But Lois is just starting now. The girls knit at different rates, but each one's rate is constant. The tables at the right show information about the number of inches of scarf knitted per hour after they both started. So I want to share with you that you cannot always just divide the numbers to figure out the rate, and let me show you why. You know that Tamika had a head start. She started this last week. And if you follow the same pattern that we were doing, you might take, oh, I know she knitted 9 inches of scarf and it took her 2 hours. This is wrong. You cannot just do 9 divided by 2, because then you get 4.5. Decimals aren't bad. And this is inches per hour. The problem is that if you look at 7 and 1, well, 7 divided by 1 is just 7 inches per hour, and well, it said she knits at a constant rate. It says each one's rate is constant. So the question is, how do you deal with this? You have to start looking at patterns in a different way. In the time it took to go from 1 to 2 hours, this increased by 1 hour. She therefore knitted between 7 and 9, 2 inches in that time. This means that her rate is 2 inches per 1 hour, or just 2 inches per hour. If you then work backwards and you're like, oh, well, okay, she knitted 2 inches of scarf, great. Then she knits 2 more inches of scarf. Well, okay, so 7 plus 2 is 9, plus 2 is 11. That's a pretty easy pattern. Okay, 7, 9, 11, that's pretty easy. How do you then go backwards? Well, you just subtract 2, and you find that she started with a scarf that was 5 inches in length. Okay, so she started with a scarf that was 5 inches long. So that's how you're going to have to do it if you don't have a starting spot at 0, 0. Because of the head start, it changed things. For the other person, though, you can look at this a few different ways. You could say, well, she went from 0 to 6 inches. So she made a scarf that was 6 inches long, and it took her 2 hours. So if you wanted to find her rate, and again I went from 0 to 2 is how I got that. If you wanted to find her rate, you would take 6 inches divided by 2 hours and get 3 inches per hour. Okay, that's pretty easy. And then 0 to 1, or 0 to 3 inches, then 3 to 6, and then 6 inches to 9. And then you've filled in the scarf. So you've got the rate for Tamika is 2 inches per hour. The rate for the second person, Lois, is 3 inches per hour. So the second person is indeed knitting faster than the first. Now it says Lois decided she wants her scarf to be 27 inches long. How long will it take her to complete the scarf? That's pretty straightforward. If she's knitting 3 inches every hour and she wants it to be 27 inches long, all you have to do for this one, 27 inches divided by the 3 inches per hour, and you're going to find that you get an answer of 9, which is 9 hours. We'll get into why the units change like that in another class. Okay. Now, if they both knitted for 12 hours, how long would their scarves be? So I'd like you to pause the video here and take a couple of minutes to figure out what point goes with hour 12 on this table. Or what is the total for 12? Okay. Now, if you paused it and actually took some time to figure that out, there's a few different ways you could do that. For Lois, if you want to know 12 hours total and you wanted to figure out the total length that she knitted, all you would have to do is do 12 times 3, which is 36. Because if she knits at 3 inches per hour, and she knits for 12 hours, it's pretty straightforward to just do 3 times 12. Now, if you were doing this for the other person, Tamika, if you're looking at her table, the problem is you cannot just do 2 times 12 because of this head start that was involved. So you could either continue this table down, it's going to get messy, and have 4, 5, all the way up to 11 and 12, and you just add 2 every time, which is possible, but it's going to get messy. Or if you don't want to have it get really messy, what you can do is you can look for a pattern. So if she does this and she knits at her unit rate of 2 for 12 hours, that means she has knitted an additional 24 inches of scarf. But she had a 5-inch head start, which means she has a total of 29 inches of scarf knitted. So at this point, after 12 hours, 29 minutes, and Lois will have 12 hours and 36 inches of scarf. So I just want to draw your attention to the difference between starting at 0, 0, like Lois, and starting with a head start, like Tamika. And their steepness of their graphs are going to be a little bit different. Specifically, Lois's graph will be steeper because of the fact that she is knitting at a faster rate. So that's about the big idea for 713 that I wanted to cover. Let me jump into the homework for this section. So on section 713's homework, I'm going to ask you to first figure out the rate per minute of each of these companies. Now, because of this word per minute, that means that you're going to put the minute value on the bottom. So every one of these ratios is going to have the dollar amount divided by the minute amount. Okay, is a rate of dollars per minute. If you wanted to find this first company, A, B, and C, or Verizon, no copyright infringement there. If you wanted to find A, B, and C, you're going to take the $19.95. You will take their price of $19.95, 19.95, divide that by the 100 minutes, and you will keep the decimals. Keep the decimals, please. When you divide this, you get 0.1995, and this is a unit rate in dollars per minute. And so if it is $0.19, you could also consider that 19 cents per minute if you wanted to. But keeping it all the same, like $0.1995 per minute, excuse me, will help you out. And let's just really quick try this for Verizon. No copyright infringement, I swear. For Verizon, you take the $24.95 divided by the 150 minutes. Again, every time you're doing this, it is dollars per minute. So you take 24.95 divided by 150, and you get a decimal value of 0.166 repeating. I'll just keep, or 1.663 that repeats. And this is in dollars per minute. So at the start of this, the first one is cheaper than the second one. So do that for the next two, and then figure out which one is going to be the lowest overall. For 7-31, it asks you which store has strawberries at about $2 for every pound. So what you want to do is you want to look at the $2 mark, which is right here. Again, $2 means that it's the dollar value on top per pound on the bottom. LB is a shortcut for pound, by the way. And then you look at this graph, and I'm going to zoom in as close as I can on this. The $2 mark is right there. The 1 pound mark is right here. There is only one line that goes through both of those spots. So if you're looking across here at $2 and then you're looking at 1 pound, again, I'm exaggerating the length of the line, but this point is what you care about because it is the $2 and 1 pound, which means if you follow the line is store C. Okay. The rate cost of strawberries for store B is going to be a little bit harder to find, but you want to look in just at line B, and I want to identify a point where the line, which is line B, I'm looking at this line, and I want to identify a spot where it neatly crosses these faint grid lines in the back. So these are the grid lines that I'm talking about now. And the first spot that it does that is right here. And if you're not used to looking at the grid lines in the background, it's going to be a little bit hard to see where this came from. But this point right here is at $4, and it matches with 1 pound. Or, just as easily, you could have looked at another spot on this grid line where it crossed right here, which is $8 for 2 pounds, which is exactly the same. It's either, if you took $8 divided by 2 pounds, you get $4 per pound, which is the same as if you did that from the 4. Okay. And the one that is the most expensive is going to be the steepest line. Okay. I will briefly talk about perimeter for this one and this one. All I will say is that perimeter is, for perimeter, it's the outside, so add those 3 together. Make sure you write centimeters. For area, you need to use the formula for area of a triangle, which you should have in your foldable. If not, it is 1/2 the base times the height. And we'll put those in parentheses. And remember that your height always makes a right angle to the base. So in this case, my base is 14. My height is 11.3. So my area is equal to 1/2 times 14 times 11.3. And your answer will be in centimeters squared because there are 2 dimensions to that. I'll leave part B up to you. Arranging the numbers from greatest to least, it's slightly backwards than what you'd expect. The greatest value is whichever one is the highest. And in this case, 1/3 is less than 1, so it clearly is not the biggest. 3.5 is the biggest. Great, let's start with 3 1/2. And then let's look at the next biggest. It's 3, and then so on. Again, you can change these into decimals. You will want to do that with 1/3, where you do 1 divided by 3 in a calculator. And on this last one, you've got a difference or sum, and each of these is going to need common denominators. So common denominator between 12 and 3 is going to be 12. So I do not have to change this first number. It can stay 11/12 minus this second fraction has to change and become out of 12. So the number I want to multiply by is 4/4. Again, it's still multiplying by 1. It's just changing the numbers around, which gives me an 8/12. And some people seem to forget that the minus sign means that you subtract. So 11 minus 8 is 3/12, which will reduce because you can reduce them both down by 3, and you get 1/4 as your answer for that. Okay. If you're still listening to this, I'll give you a couple freebie advice. The least common multiple for this one is going to be 24, and the least common multiple between 10 and 8 is going to be 40. So you're going to make each of these out of 40, and you're going to make each of these out of 24. Thanks for watching. I'll do the YouTube thing. Hit like and subscribe so you can get notifications on these if they're helpful. And good luck, 6th grade.